Socialist Abdul El-Sayed has just won the Democratic nomination for Senate in Michigan, giving the socialist left another major victory inside the Democratic Party, and Republicans a much better chance at winning the seat. The final three-poll average before the primary had El-Sayed trailing Republican Mike Rogers by 4.4 points, while his establishment opponent, Congresswoman Haley Stevens, was tied with Rogers. Democratic primary voters chose a more socialist candidate, and the polling immediately shifted the race towards Republicans. This is the electoral angle, and let's break down the Democrats' socialist problem. El-Sayed rejects the socialist label, but he has appeared at 6 events organized by the Democratic Socialists of America, called the DSA, including a fundraiser where the Detroit DSA described him as a longtime friend of the organization. Bernie Sanders and AOC endorsed him, and his platform includes Medicare for All, a billionaire wealth tax, and public ownership of major artificial intelligence companies. Calling him a socialist, a social democrat, or a progressive, the political distinction is becoming very small. El-Sayed defeated a candidate backed by national Democratic leaders, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Gary Peters, the retiring senator whose seat they were competing to fill. AIPAC spent close to $30 million supporting Stevens, while outside organizations backing her spent close to $50 million overall. It didn't work. El-Sayed won, and Michigan is only the latest example. Zohran Mamdani won control of New York City as an open Democratic Socialist, then endorsed Brad Lander, Claire Valdez, and Sevilla in congressional primaries. All three won, defeating 2 sitting members of Congress, and 2 are self-described Democratic Socialists. Mamdani now has candidates, volunteers, donors, and enough political influence to end congressional careers. This is not one popular politician. This is a political machine, a socialist political machine. The DSA normally runs candidates through Democratic primaries instead of competing as a separate party, allowing socialists to use the Democratic ballot line, reach Democratic voters, and take control of party nominations without building a viable third party. The organization has around 120,000 members, which is tiny compared to the entire Democrat electorate, but highly motivated activists can dominate low turnout primaries through volunteering, fundraising, and door-to-door organization. The DSA's official positions also go far beyond higher taxes and larger welfare programs. Its program calls for public ownership of America's largest corporations and essential industries, abolishing the United States Senate, and replacing the independently elected president and current Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary selected by and subordinate to Congress. Mamdani discussed the end goal of seizing the means of production during a 2021 Young Democrat Socialist Conference. His current mayoral platform does not call for seizing every private business, but he used the phrase while discussing how socialists could connect popular short-term issues to their wider ideological goals. The DSA also contains an openly communist faction. The Marxist Unity Group says it operates inside the DSA, wants a socialist revolution in the United States, and envisions a society without markets, borders, or classes. In their words, in a word, communism. That faction does not speak for every DSA member, but communism is clearly present inside the organization. So why are Democrats moving towards these ideas? Affordability. 66% of Americans say that groceries are unaffordable, including 82% of people earning under $50,000 and 56% of people earning more than $100,000. 59% do not believe families like theirs have a good chance of improving their standard of living. People are paying more for food, housing, healthcare, and education while becoming less confident that working harder will improve their lives. Socialists respond with simple promises: replace private health insurance, make college free, build public housing, control rent, and tax billionaires. Only 8% of Americans describe themselves as socialists, but 52% support replacing private health insurance with a national government plan. 55% support government paid college tuition, and 57% support government built public housing. The socialist label remains unpopular, but many socialist policies are popular. Americans may not want socialism as an ideology. They want the medical bill to disappear. They want rent to fall, and college to stop creating decades of debt. Among Democratic voters, even the ideological label has become popular. Gallup found that 66% of Democrats view socialism positively, while only 42% view capitalism positively. Reuters and Ipsos also found that 71% of Democrats now identify as liberal, up from 55% in 2012, while a large majority of liberal Democrats consider universal government funded healthcare and higher taxes on the wealthy essential. That pressure is pushing establishment Democrats to the left. California's Proposition 40 would impose a one-time 5% tax on the wealth of roughly 200 billionaires, while supporters project around $100 billion in revenue, mostly for healthcare. The California Democratic Party endorsed the measure, even though Governor Gavin Newsom and Democratic gubernatorial nominee Javier Becerra opposes it. Newsom, however, supports the same basic idea nationally. He opposes a California-only wealth tax because billionaires can leave the state, but he has proposed a nationwide tax on people worth more than $100 billion. The socialist left demanded a billionaire tax. Newsom rejected the state version and adopted a federal version. This is how an ideological movement changes a party. It moves the boundaries of the debate until the establishment politicians begin adopting its positions. Israel is creating another major shift. El-Sayed supports ending military aid to Israel, yet he defeated the largest AIPAC investment in their organization's history. In Congress, 103 House Democrats recently voted to block $3.3 billion in aid to Israel, and a Reuters Ipsos poll found that only 16% of Democrats supported continuing military and economic assistance. Opposing aid to Israel is no longer a fringe position inside the Democratic Party. Wisconsin shows how this shift can help socialists win primaries while hurting Democrats in general elections. Francesca Hong is a Wisconsin state representative, DSA member, and gubernatorial candidate who has said that her ideal world would eventually contain no police or prisons. Francesca, before former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes left the race, the two latest primary polls averaged Hong at 32%, Barnes at 22.5%, Sarah Rodriguez at 11%, and Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley at 9%. Barnes then dropped out and acknowledged that it had become clear who the likely nominee would be. Hong is probably winning the Democratic primary. The general election numbers are much worse for her. The two poll average had Barnes leading Republican Congressman Tom Tiffany by 4 points, 46% to 42%, while Hong was tied with Tiffany at 43.5%. The same Democratic voters who moved towards a socialist candidate may have turned a 4-point Democratic advantage into a toss-up. A Marquette poll found an even larger difference among independents. Barnes led Tiffany by 11 points with those voters, while Hong trailed Tiffany by 7, a swing of 18 points. Hong can still win, but she appears less electable than a more conventional Democrat in a year that should favor the party. Other left-wing candidates have produced mixed results. Billionaire Tom Steyer spent more than $200 million of his own money running for California governor on aggressive taxes and other left populist positions. Then finished third. A billionaire self-funding an anti-billionaire campaign was never a convincing messenger. Graham Platner had the opposite image in Maine. The military veteran and working class populace won more than 70% of the Democratic Senate primary vote after being backed by Bernie Sanders, then withdrew after a sexual assault allegation that he denied. Platner's collapse was personal, not ideological. Democratic voters had overwhelmingly accepted his economic message. The pattern is clear. Left-wing economic policies have real appeal, especially when voters are angry about affordability. But socialist candidates can repel the independents and moderate Democrats need in competitive states. This is especially dangerous in 2026 because the national environment favors Democrats. A Reuters Ipsos poll gives Democrats a 5-point lead on the congressional ballot and a narrow advantage over Republicans on handling the economy. Independents prefer Democrats by 12 points. Despite that environment, Hong is tied in Wisconsin, and El-Sayed entered the general election polling substantially worse than Rogers and Stevens did. Polls are not election results, and El-Sayed could recover once Democrats consolidate behind him. But Republicans are clearly more likely to win Michigan with the Socialist as a nominee than they were with moderate Democrat Stevens. Rogers already came within 0.3 of 1 percentage point of winning Michigan's 2024 Senate election. He now gets to run against a candidate connected to the DSA who supports Medicare for all, wealth taxes, and public ownership of companies. This is a significant Republican opportunity. Republicans hold a 53 to 47 Senate majority, meaning Democrats need a net gain of 4 seats for a Senate majority. Michigan is an open Democrat-held seat, so losing it would force Democrats to flip 5 Republican seats just to reach a majority. This is the silver lining for conservatives. The Democratic Party is moving towards socialists, but the movement may be helping Republicans survive a Democratic wave by producing weaker general election candidates. The Democratic establishment understands the risk and keeps trying to stop the left. Moderate presidential candidates consolidated behind Joe Biden to beat Bernie Sanders in 2020. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo continued as an independent after losing the mayoral primary to Mamdani. Democratic leaders and tens of millions in outside spending supported Stevens. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers backed Crowley, and California Democrats rallied around Becerra instead of Steyer. The establishment still controls many donors, endorsements, and party institutions, but the socialist left is increasingly controlling young voters, volunteers, and primary enthusiasm. That brings up 2028. At its 2025 convention, the DSA passed 2 resolutions committing the organization to exploring a presidential campaign in 2028. One proposal recommended beginning with a DSA candidate who could eventually withdraw and support someone such as AOC. AOC is the obvious national vehicle for this movement because she has the name, recognition, fundraising network, online following, and a connection to Bernie Sanders. Michigan and Wisconsin may determine whether she has a viable path. If El-Sayed and Hong win competitive general elections, socialists can argue that they defeated party leaders, overcame corporate spending, and won swing states. If they lose races that more conventional Democrats appear better positioned to win, the establishment can argue that socialism costs the Democrats control of the government. This is the Democrats' socialist problem. The socialist left is winning Democratic primaries, moving establishment politicians towards its policies, and preparing for a presidential campaign. But in Michigan and Wisconsin, the same shift appears to be making Republicans more competitive. The socialist takeover may be real, The good news for Republicans is that it may be backfiring. The Democrats have a real choice to make this year and in 2028. What is the direction of their party? And what do you guys think? Do you think El-Sayed and Hong will win in November? Or did Democratic primary voters just give Republicans two major opportunities? Could AOC become the Democratic presidential nominee in 2028? Time will tell, but I'd love to hear from you guys, so leave a comment down below, and thanks for watching the Electoral Angle.